Right, I'm putting my foot down. This question has went unanswered for too long. What is the question, you ask? Clearly oblivious to the video title. I'm going to be answering the age-old question, what is a Sol Badguy? Sol Badguy is the main guy in Guilty Gear. He's an arrogant and brash prick with a lackadaisical outlook on life, which, to be fair to him, is understandable considering he's like 190 years old. If I had to live that long without Fortnite, I'd go mental as well. He's really bad at dealing with people, so rather than try to reason with or even just talk to them, he usually just brute forces his way through most interactions. He's not exactly combat trained, he just swings the biggest thing he can get his hands on, and then uses his extremely overpowered strength to batter people's heads in. A good example of this being put into action is the fact that his first weapon was just a block of concrete. Like, he was in a very official army of knights, all of them haven't been trained in proper combat, and he was just running around hitting people over the head with a big brick. Yet he was the strongest person there, so
that's why he's the GOAT!
Daisuke is a massive Westaboo, which is glaringly obvious when you take a closer look at Sol's designs. Hell, even just his name is a reference to Freddie Mercury, Mr. Badguy being a nickname that Freddie Mercury was called back in the day, or so I've heard. More Western references in Sol's designs include his human name being Frederick Bulsara, which is literally just Freddie Mercury's actual birth name. Sol's headband is probably a reference to We Will Rock You. Sol's instant kill Napalm Death shares its name with the British grindcore band, and for one that isn't a rock band reference, Sol's attack Fafnir is a reference to the Norse myth in which a little dwarf named Fafnir was cursed to become a dragon, which is also a reference to Sol's story of being cursed to become a gear, with his gear self appearing to look dragon-esque, hence the name Dragon Install. Unsurprisingly, his real name isn't actually Sol Badguy. Before he went by Sol, his name was Frederick, and he was a geeky scientist who was working with his mate, That Man, and his lover, Arya, to create gear cells. What are gear cells? They're basically magical steroids that will make people stupidly durable and capable of like leaping into a volcano and walking back out unscathed. It's kinda similar to the stuff that purple minions took. Obviously not as cool because, you know, they're minions. After handing the research over to the government, giving them specific instructions to not use this research to make weapons, That Man and Frederick learn that Arya is sick and both insist that she go into cryosleep until they find a cure.
I love you.
Fuck off.
But Arya owns them with facts and logic because she's a big nerd, saying that not dying isn't the same as living. Frederick accepts this and agrees to let her live out the rest of her time how she wants, because he's such a nice guy. That Man, however, convinces Arya to cryosleep with the promise that Frederick will be there when she wakes up. He then plants the flame of corruption in Frederick and then pisses off because he's a dickhead. The only explanation for the flame of corruption that I can find is written in nerd terms, so I'll try and simplify it. The flame of corruption is a magical thing that cranks the power of gear cells all the way up, making the holder of it ridiculously powerful and almost godlike, which is why Sol is able to get away with using concrete as a weapon with little to no combat training. After Frederick wakes up from getting the flame of corruption shoved inside of him, the facility that he's in is in the midst of a massive incident. And after struggling through the facility, past many little beasts, and successfully detaching a dog's head from its torso, Frederick manages to make his way to That Man, who denies having ever been his friend, and then flees the facility with Arya, because, and let me emphasize this once more, he's a dickhead. This pisses Sol off, obviously, so he makes himself a sick-ass headband to help him keep control of his gear powers and seeks revenge against That Man. He goes around destroying a ton of different organisations in his search for him, earning him the name Badguy. Very creative. After the government revealed their first battle-ready gear in 2065, Frederick made it his mission to destroy every gear, his reasoning being that he, along with every other gear, was just forged by the greed of people, and so they're nothing more than a symbol of humanity's wrongs. Slayer, the spooky vampire, tracked down Frederick and must have thought he was real hot because he nicknamed him Sol, like the sun. And Sol kept it because he realised Sol Badguy is a kick-ass name. In 2073, the government finishes work on Justice, the first complete gear, one that can command the other gears, created by That Man, using Arya as the body, in an attempt to stop the government from using the gears as weapons. But it was taken control of by the Universal Will, which we won't get into because that's a whole other can of worms. Because of the interference, the entirety of Japan was just blown to pieces. For the third time, they cannot catch a break. Sol hears about this and does the most rational thing he could think of, and instantly creates a super weapon, just because he can, but it was so powerful that he had to split it into 8 pieces. What the point in creating it if it couldn't even be used was? I don't know. He just wanted to flex, I guess. All the pieces ended up being taken by the United Nations and the Sacred Order of Holy Knights, somehow. So basically, Sol created a ridiculously powerful weapon with the ability to take in infinite magic and output infinite energy, and then just let it be taken by the government. Incredible job, great work, man. Justice declared war against humanity in 2074, beginning the Crusades, and Sol just continued to do his routine of beating people's asses, just now he had a better excuse to do it. While doing this, he ended up saving some kid called Cliff Anderson. Just a quick reminder before continuing, it's been nearly 100 years since Frederick legally died. The year is now 2103, and Sol has been travelling in isolation, just battering people's heads in for well near 100 years without speaking to anyone. And now it's 2172. Big time skip, I know, but that's just Guilty Gear, you'll get used to it. Cliff is now an old man, and decides to search for Sol and recruit him to the Sacred Order of Holy Knights.
I gotta go fast.
Assigning him to the battalion of Kai Kisk. The second protagonist of Guilty Gear, but this ain't about him. Sol and Kai don't get along, mostly because of Sol's distaste for following orders, and the fact that Kai didn't actually try when they both fought, because he assumed Sol was just a human, which meant that Sol just beat his ass because, yeah, he's not human. Then a year later, Sol fights Justice by himself and gets absolutely bodied. Realizing that he's fucked if he doesn't get a better weapon than a brick of concrete, he decides to steal the fire seal, one of the pieces of the outrage. Kai catches him, and then gets his ass beat once again while Sol scurries away with the fire seal. 2 years later, Sol fights Justice again, but she notices he's a gear, and her whole thing is being able to control gears, so she tries it on him, but Sol isn't affected by it because while Justice is the original gear, Sol is the prototype gear. And so he beats her ass so hard she gets sealed away in a dimensional prison, and the war ends. And with that ending, Sol just fucks off again to kill more gears and search for that man, because he's just awesome like that. Now, I have a confession. All of this happens before the events of the first Guilty Gear. This is all the setup for the actual games. I'm not joking. 160 years of story happened as a prologue to the games. Great stuff from the GOAT, Daisuke Ishiwatari as always. So I hope that sufficiently answered the question, what is a Sol Badguy? I will not be getting into the story of the games because I don't want this video to be 30 minutes long. If you like this one though, subscribe because there will be more, and maybe if enough people want it I'll actually do a full Guilty Gear story video. But if you really hate me talking about Guilty Gear, recommend me a game in the comments and I might make a video about it if I fuck with it. See you next time.